right, good afternoon. My name is Turner Bitten here. I'm the executive director here at Westview Media. I apologize that we are a few minutes late getting started. Zoom decided that it didn't want to work with Facebook, so we had to switch to a new Zoom link. I appreciate Danny's patience as we kind of got that technical issue figured out. Today's conversation is the next in our City Talk series. Basically, the goal of this event series is to bring local leaders from Salt Lake City to the Westview to have a conversation about the different work that different departments and organizations within the city do, and to have a conversation with the folks who are doing the work and get to know them. Today, we're joined by Danny Walz with the Salt Lake City Redevelopment Agency. Welcome, Danny.
Thanks for having me, Turner. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, we're really grateful for you taking time out of your schedule to be here with us. A couple of housekeeping items. The audience is on Facebook. If you're watching along and you have a question that you'd like to submit, please do so in the chat and we'll get to as many of them as we can. Given the broad array of projects that the Redevelopment Agency is working on, we probably won't get into any specific projects today. We'll keep our conversation focused a little bit higher, at a much higher level, just about the work of the Redevelopment Agency and kind of some bigger ticket projects that are happening, but we won't get into little individual projects. Otherwise, I think we'd get bogged down in that kind of granular detail. But to get started, Danny, why don't you give us a little bit about your background, tell us where you're from, how you came to the position you're in, and kind of what you do every day.
That's great. I appreciate that. Thanks. My name is Danny Walz, director of the Redevelopment Agency. I'm originally from Southern California, came out here to go to school at the University of Utah. And it's easy to say that redevelopment's been my focus for 2.5 decades. I first started at Salt Lake City RDA back in 1995 as an intern. During school, I continued to work part-time, and then I was hired full-time after graduating from the University of Utah with a degree in finance. Continued to work for Salt Lake City for 9 years through the different ranks before leaving to become the RDA director for Midvale City. There I oversaw the redevelopment of 2 Superfund sites that comprised over 700 acres. And then eventually I returned back to Salt Lake City in 2017 to become the director of Salt Lake City's RDA. So never would have thought when I started as an intern that I'd still be doing this after 25 years, but I consider Salt Lake City home now. I love it. I love working within the city and making your own city a better place. And the job is great because it's never the same thing on any given day. I have the pleasure and the honor of working with a great group of professionals who all want to make the city a better place. So every day it doesn't really feel like a job as much as just all of us working towards something that we're all very passionate about.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate, again, your time today. Is there a club of long-term city staff that all hang out and compare who's been there the longest?
Ironically, yeah, there kind of is. Well, at least within RDA. In fact, just the other morning, I did a Zoom call with the people who originally hired me back in 1995, and 2 of them worked for the city for over 30 years, and one was with the city for over a decade, and then a coworker that also joins us, she retired from the RDA last year after she did 30 years. So I guess that does kind of make us a club.
Well, we appreciate all of the public service that you do and that all of the folks at Salt Lake City do for our city. Can you, let's start at a little bit of a higher level and just, can you explain what the Redevelopment Agency does? Obviously it redevelops property, yep. But let's get at a high level, what does the Redevelopment Agency do?
Yeah, great question. So at a very high level, to simplify, what the RDA does is we invest in Salt Lake City's neighborhoods and business districts. And our goal is to improve livability throughout the city. And generally we do this through strategic development and projects that include housing at a range of affordability levels, commercial spaces, economic development, public spaces, public art. We are a staff of about 14 employees right now, and at any given time, we're actively working on anywhere between 80 to 100 projects that vary in nature. And these projects are everything from our true real estate development projects, whether that be acquisition or disposition and development of property, or loans that we typically provide gap financing on loans for construction and renovation projects. We also, as an agency, help manage and oversee assets such as the Gallivan Center and Eccles Theater through our partnership with the county and the city. We do infrastructure improvements and open space. And then we also do a lot of studies and plans that we utilize to ultimately make redevelopment decisions to guide our work within the areas that we target. So chances are people who live in Salt Lake City have encountered an RDA associated project at some time. They probably don't even know it within their daily routine. We've completed nearly 400 projects that range everything from pocket parks to library plazas to streetscape improvements, historic building renovations, affordable and single room occupancy housing, neighborhood business spaces, commercial office towers, the whole gamut. And so our goal now and our direction is to start really putting a better focus on doing these projects with the priority on equity and sustainability to align with the mayor's goals and priorities as well as the city council. You know, on a day-to-day basis, our work ranges from, you know, any given day, it's a huge range across all those projects that we do. We do a lot of internal and external meetings that kind of guide the projects that we're working on and manage those. We regularly meet with the development community councils, neighborhood groups, and other stakeholders to work through some of these issues and what those projects will mean for an area. And then the mayor and the city council directly work with us as far as our projects, our priorities, and our policies that guide everything we do. And somewhere in there, if we have the opportunity, we try to mix in long-term planning and strategy. So all of this work is handled by an amazing staff of extremely intelligent, creative people who are trained in various fields from urban design and planning and engineering, finance, property management, communications. And really my role as the director is just to kind of provide that high level direction, our priorities, and try to navigate the politics as best I can.
Well, thank you. The breadth of what your agency does is pretty remarkable. So but my next question, to just kind of help folks understand where you're situated within the broader Salt Lake City government, are you part of the city? Are you separate from the city? Can you kind of explain how you work with the city and where you're situated?
We are yes and yes, part of the city and separate from the city. We are established by state statute, technically as a separate legal entity from the city. And so in a lot of legal and policy components, we have to be separate from the city. However, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, we're a duck. And so from that standpoint, we are very much guided within how the city operates. The mayor serves as our executive director. The city council serves as our board of directors. And so on a day-to-day basis, we very much operate like the city and very similar to any other city department. Biggest difference with us is we tend to have a broader set of tools that we can utilize. And so as we work with the city, if you think of the city as kind of setting those longer term land use policies through their zoning and master plans, they do that somewhat in a way that they are then looking for others to come and the city guides them in how they can carry out that redevelopment of their property or what the city's goals and objectives are. We as an agency come in and we kind of take that active implementation step of taking those master plans and then trying to go out and operate in the real estate development market and make those things happen and come to fruition in a way that the city would like to see happen. So a great example is the city's housing plan, Growing SLC. The city, through their housing and neighborhood development department, set those high level goals and priorities and really the direction that they want to see the city go in as it accomplishes its goals for affordable housing. And then both the RDA and the city's housing department in our various ways and with our different sets of tools go out and carry out those objectives with our programs and our funding and our initiatives. And so we do that with a lot of different departments throughout the city, whether it's housing or economic development, the Arts Council, transportation, engineering, public services. et cetera. Our goal is to try to take these initiatives and long-term plans that these departments come up with, and then help them kind of move those forward in a way that we all would like to see it happen.
Thank you. So to kind of just give you a break and make sure that I'm understanding. So the city council sets the goalposts, and then you conduct the work within those goalposts, basically, for development.
Yeah, the city administration more or less sets the goalposts and the direction. The council helps guide that with their priorities. They set the policies, and then they ultimately approve the budget and the funding to carry out those policies. And so that's kind of that separation of powers, but both working towards a common goal, and their various roles and how we accomplish that.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for that information and for clarifying how your agency is structured. I think the next thing I'd like to do is let's kind of talk through the life cycle of a development. So we don't have to pick any particular one, although if you want to use one as an example, feel free to do so. But let's say that I have some property that I want to redevelop. What does that look like, and how does that process work within Salt Lake City?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, for the most part, the agency, we are bound by project areas where we can operate within. And so we establish these target areas throughout the city, and that guides our efforts of where we can focus. The one exception to that is we can do affordable housing citywide. So depending on where your property is located, we may or may not be able to be involved, or if it's housing, we can typically do that citywide. And so if you're a property owner within one of our project areas, you can come and meet with us, and we can inform you as to kind of what our goals and priorities are for the area, what your options would be both within the zoning context and the master plan. And then we would also take it a step further as you kind of talk through what you'd like to do with the property, depending on what that plan is, or if you have any financial gaps within your budget to see that plan through. We would then be able to provide assistance in the way of either a loan or maybe a tax reimbursement agreement. And we would then be able to work with you through our various programs to do that. And our role at that point would be, one, as I said, to help you cover any maybe financial gap you have in your project due to either site constraints or what your goals are with development. And at the same time, inform you of how a function of us participating in your project and providing that assistance, we would like to further what those public benefits are that you might carry out in your project. And that would be anything from affordable housing towards making your development more transit oriented, to sustainability measures, maybe public art, maybe it's more economic development with jobs, maybe it's open space. So we run the gamut of public benefits that we really try to make projects better than what you would see through normal market conditions, and encourage developers to think beyond just a standard, return on investment for their project, and really do something that, invigorates the area and provides a benefit to the community.
Thank you. So you mentioned project areas. Would that be, for example, like the 9-line community reinvestment area?
Yep. Yeah, we have several throughout the city. Some are much older, like our Central Business District. We've had some that have since expired, like our Sugar House or West Temple Gateway, and we have two that we were just trying to wrap up the final approvals for, and that's the 9-line and our State Street project areas. And so each area is different size, different goals and objectives. They were created at different times, so they have different constraints and restrictions based on what the state statute was at the time. But ultimately, what we do is we create a plan for the area that really pulls from the city's master plan, the zoning, what the community wants, and then we use that to develop what's called the project area plan. And then that's kind of our strategic plan for how we want to implement change, work with the community, work with the property owners, and do something that really just, invests in the area and tries to bring things in that area that are either lacking or that they would like to expand upon, or provide opportunities that may not exist there, whether that's affordable housing or improved transit, streetscape, open space, small businesses. So it's really catered to what the area is, and we try to do that with a view on what the city's overall goals are.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up on the 9-line CRA. I know I said I wouldn't get into very specific projects, but I just want to use it as an example. And have you talk about the process for creating a project area. So taking the 9-line as an example, how does that project come about, and what are the kind of
Yeah.
steps for creating it?
Yeah, well, not to bore you with the details or bog you down with too much of the history, I'll try to keep it high level and say it's really a true balance between one, what the requirements are in the process that is first dictated within the state statute, and that's somewhat complicated and not very user friendly, but we have to start with that. And then from there, we work very closely with our various city departments, as well as our elected officials, the mayor and the council, who ultimately make the determination of where we want to take our efforts and what parts of the city we want to focus on. And so we have those parameters that we review as part of just considering areas. And we did that with the 9-line area, and that's where the elected officials obviously prioritized our efforts in that neighborhood. From there, we start doing public outreach. We involve the community. We really reach out to them, both in terms of what the area would look like, of where we draw the boundaries, what they'd like to see developed in their area or improved, what opportunities they feel that they would really like to have, and really start putting that in the context of making sure that the community is involved and invested in that. We take all of that and we ultimately create what I refer to as that project area plan. And then in order to get that plan approved, we have to work with the various taxing entities who ultimately provide us the source of our funding through property tax increment. And so we work directly with the city, the school district, and the county, and maybe some of the other smaller taxing entities to go and essentially get them involved in what we see as the vision for the area, and to help buy into the plan to see what their benefit would be of contributing the tax dollars and sharing in that growth. And then the final steps of that are negotiating the specific agreements with those taxing entities, approving that plan in its final version, and then approving a budget that ultimately provides the funding that we then, over the course of 20 to 25 years, will turn around and invest in that area to carry out the goals and objectives that we.
Well, thank you. I think that's very helpful for understanding the way that you do your work. One final question. You mentioned taxing entities, and I just want to define those for folks. So can you explain what a taxing entity is? And then can you explain just quickly what tax increment means? Because those
Sure.
tend to go hand in hand.
Yeah, so taxing entities, if you're a property owner, a taxing entity is anyone who levies a property tax rate on your property. So every year when you pay your property taxes, there's a list of those different entities based on where your property is located, and they impose a tax on your property that you pay, and then they use that to fund their various operations. So we receive what is called tax increment, and that's our primary funding source. So we work within those targeted project areas to reinvest in the community. And so when the areas are created, the current assessed property values for that entire area are basically established as a baseline or a floor. And the various taxing entities continue to receive the revenue that they had always been receiving, and those get paid directly to them. So we're not taking anything from them, we're not impacting their budgets, and we're not taking money out of those budgets. But as those property values increase over time, both as a result of just the overall increase in property value or the efforts that we carry out to develop and invest in the area, as those values increase, we as an agency split that additional growth with all of the taxing entities as new revenue. And so the entities realize a benefit over the years as continuing to receive new growth. And then the agency receives a split of that. And that can be anywhere from, we receive 60 to 75% of that revenue, and the entities receive the rest. So the agency utilizes that new revenue to carry out the goals that are established in the project area plan. And as I said, we do that over a time frame of 20, maybe 25 years. And then once that area expires after that time frame, what the agency had been receiving is that new growth from that increment gets distributed right back to the property or the taxing entities, and then they receive it ongoing as new growth and an increase in their budget and their funds.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I'm going to give you a break for just a second because I've given you about, I think, 5 questions and
No, it's good.
I'll give you a little break for a second and just remind the audience, if you're watching live and you have a question, please feel free to submit it in the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can. I'm going to go back to some of my prepared questions. And my next one, I think we all have a good understanding of what your agency does. So now, in your view, what is the most important takeaway for folks watching about the redevelopment agency?
I think you've kind of summed it up a lot just with the questions and in the introduction. We are a little bit complex, and we're a little bit of this kind of offshoot, and so unfortunately, there's a lot of misconceptions about what the RDA does and how we work with the city. And as I've tried to explain, that's kind of a function of this balance between how we're set up by state statute, how we receive our funding, and admittedly, that's extremely confusing. I mean, I don't know if I fully understand it after 25 years. So I'm certainly not expecting anyone that, to understand it who doesn't really work within this field. And so, the easiest way to think of us is we're kind of like a tool that the city can use, kind of like a Swiss Army knife, insofar as we can be used many, many different ways. And some of the bigger projects we do attract a lot of attention. And our staff is extremely dedicated, and we work really hard to insert public benefits into our projects. And unfortunately, that doesn't often become the storyline or the narrative for some of the projects we do. And we spend a considerable amount of time on the smaller projects. It's amazing how sometimes even the smallest of projects are the most complicated and take a lot more time than some of the bigger ones. But that's really because those are some of the ones that are harder to do or need, a little bit more creativity or assistance. And those are ultimately the ones that make a great impact on the community. So, our biggest thing for us is we would really always encourage people to reach out if they have questions or want information. And anyone can throw bad information out there in social media these days, and we are always willing to chat. We're always willing to provide information. We love talking about our projects and plans with, the community and residents of what we'd like to do for them. And that's a function of we have an amazing staff that are probably some of the most dedicated and passionate people in the city that just, the end of the day, they want to make the city a better place, and they love hearing the input of what people want to see and how we can help them accomplish that for their neighborhood.
Thank you. So moving on to the next question, and this is a little bit of a loaded question for your agency, but can you share some of the projects or priorities that you're working on?
Yeah, no, that's what we do. And so, we do that out in the public view, and we try to be as transparent as possible on what we're doing and involve everyone in doing that. So, some of the ones that we're excited that we're working on right now is we're working very closely with city departments on coming up with the plan to revitalize the ballpark and the area surrounding that. We've talked about how we're trying to get the final pieces approved for our 9-line and State Street project areas so that we can then come up with the implementation plans for that and have people start seeing the benefits of us coming into their community and really helping them help us drive the investment that they'd like to see. We've been working for the past almost 2 years on finalizing a housing policy. We've worked closely with the housing department on really trying to establish and finalize our respective roles in that. And our goal as an agency is to create a one-stop shop, so to speak, for developers of affordable housing projects that want to come and have the city provide assistance and invest in these projects. And so that'll really help streamline that process and try to move these projects forward with a lot less, red tape from the city and the agency. We're getting ready to put out to bid the streetscape improvements for Central 9th area and working with the engineering and transportation departments to get that out on the streets to bid. We have several property dispositions on North Temple, our former overnighter motel site, the State Street project that is under construction at 255 South State. And then we have the former DI building in Sugar House that we're starting to work on what that redevelopment and project would look like. And then throughout all of this, we're excited to be working on an equity plan and infusing that into everything that the agency does, as well as we've taken the challenge from the mayor on creating a sustainability policy and really integrating that as a threshold and requirement of all the projects and the financing that we do with any partners. And so those are probably the ones that are kind of moving the needle the most for us and the ones we're really excited to start kind of bringing out in the public eye.
Thank you. Speaking of sustainability and equity, what are some strategies? And I know you mentioned you're working on your plan, but have there been some consistent themes that have come out, or any ideas that you'd like to share as to how you're kind of working on those and integrating them into your
Yeah,
work?
I mean, as far as sustainability, we've been working for a while now with the sustainability department. The agency has always kind of had that as one of our benchmarks, and we work with sustainability on how we can continue to evolve that and make sure that the agency standard is not lagging behind what is in the industry and what should be the best practices for real estate projects. And with Mayor Mendenhall coming into office, she said that wasn't good enough. We got to step it up and we got to do even more. And so she really wants to make that a threshold for getting pretty much any participation or funding through the agency. And so we're working through what that would look like at the different levels based on the different scale of projects we do. Everything from a small business loan to what could be a large residential or corporate tower. And there's a lot of nuances and details in that one size doesn't fit all. And so we're really excited to be, challenged with that and try to figure that out. And we're working on that from a policy perspective and hoping to have something in place that can really, raise the bar for any project that we're involved in. Same with equity. This has been a big priority for the current administration and the city council. We want to make sure that everything we do, we are doing it in an eye of equity and making sure everyone has that opportunity to be involved, making sure everyone has those opportunities to do development, making sure they have the same resources available to them if they want to improve their property or make something happen in their neighborhood. And so that is something that we are looking at how we can do a better job across the board in anything the agency does, whether that's our programs and policies, whether that's our community outreach, how we, dedicate and propose what our funding and budget is. And so it's really a shift in our mindset that we really are excited to kind of infuse into the department and make sure we're doing that in conjunction with what the overall city's efforts are for equity and anti-displacement and gentrification. So it's long overdue. We've done it in pieces, but this really has taken it to that next level of making sure we are reevaluating every step of our process and everything we do.
Thank you. You mentioned anti-displacement, and we actually just received our first audience question on what type of policies you have or what type of work you do to promote anti-displacement and to avoid displacing folks.
Yeah, we do quite a bit, at least from the agency, as far as what we can control. And so, obviously within any property that the agency has either actively purchased and then redeveloping over the years as we have done that, if those properties have ever had residents, we have always worked above and beyond, to make sure that those residents aren't quote unquote displaced. Great example is when we purchased the overnighter motel a couple of years ago. We realized that there were 12 groups of individuals and families that were living there as their full-time residents. And that was completely unexpected that, there are that many people there that were actually, not just using it as a motel, but that was the only source of housing they had. And so we took it upon ourselves to use the HUD standards for relocation assistance. We provided those resources and we made sure before we did anything that we offered assistance and provided those funds and worked with people to find permanent housing. And so that's an example of how we approach projects. And then obviously, if we are working with developers and we feel that as a result of their efforts, there's going to be some displacement, we will work with them as part of any funding we provide to make sure that they are following the rules and requirements that they need to make sure that they're not just displacing people and that we're not going to be involved in a project that would promote that or result in that for the residents. So.
Thank you. My next question, this is a little bit of a bigger ticket question, but just wondering if you could kind of share your approach and philosophy to how you approach your work at the Redevelopment Agency.
Yeah, that's a great question. The RDA has been around for over 50 years, and we have really tried to make sure that we maintain that mindset of fostering, kind of the city's, uniqueness and authenticity as we have worked to operate in a balanced way. And not only, within the areas of the city, but also in preserving its history and its unique character. And so for us as an agency, what was important was to kind of set up core values that we believe and establish those public benefits that we want to make sure that we infuse in our projects. So, our core values are community impact, neighborhood vibrancy, and economic growth. And the easiest way to think of these are kind of the place, people, and returns that we would like to see from investment. So community impact is things like, public space and transit opportunities, making sure that neighborhoods are mixed income, that they have opportunities for local businesses and public art. And so that's really the place that we kind of like to focus on. Neighborhood vibrancy is the people. This is kind of that environment that affects them. So that's everything from, site and urban design and the materials and architecture of a building, as well as things like sustainability, walkability and preservation of some of these structures. And then the economic growth, since ultimately we do try to make sure that we have some return on our investment. These are things of making sure that we are leveraging private investment from developers, timeliness of projects, what that return on investment might be, not just from a pure, revenue and return, but really what are some of those intangible benefits of, if we fix up this property, it may help improve, several properties around it. That isn't a direct return, but it does ultimately provide a return to us. And then how can we target these resources in the most effective way and establish districts and neighborhoods that kind of, improve the quality of life throughout the city overall. So, over 50 years, from my own perspective and, my time of doing it for 25 years, this has evolved quite a bit over time, and as the city's grown and as the version of redevelopment has changed. And so at the different levels of working from an intern to staff and now leadership, the vantage point I have is really just kind of trying to see how a project can have an impact on the community long term. And so I don't know if I have a set philosophy as much as, the simple thing is probably just to hire people smarter and more creative than me who can carry this out and push me to continue to evolve and see things differently. And we try to encapsulate that as an agency within our culture of really always trying to just think differently and think better of how we could be doing things.
Thank you. We did receive a comment from Kathy about the sale of 5 homes at 600 North. From what I understand, your agency is not involved in that particular development, correct?
We are not. That is correct.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that, Kathy, so that you were responded to. My next question, and this is my last prepared question for you, but can you share kind of a story of success or something inspirational that's happened in your time at your agency?
Yeah, I think not to dodge the question, I think I would say that's evolved over my career. I think early on as I started, I was very, very inspired and proud of projects like we did with, some of the smaller business loans I did. Worked closely with the Cope kids in Sugar House to develop the Hidden Hollow natural space. And then also installing public art that, around the city that I now see my son climb on and I have to yell at him. And then shifting to Midvale City, which over time, they were overseeing Superfund sites. And so that was taking something that was an eyesore and a danger to the community in terms of the contaminated properties and turning that into an asset with affordable housing and parks and transit oriented development. And so now coming back to the agency and looking at it, as leadership and as a director and with what our elected officials and our staff are really, seeing as this higher purpose of trying to make sure that what we were doing is grounded in equity in these community-driven projects and sustainability. And it's a shift, from when I started 25 years ago to what, redevelopment was in terms of just, eliminating blight and, doing projects. It is now very much making sure that we do that with a sense of, the larger community goals and priorities. And it's long overdue. It's something that we are excited to put in place and really try to kind of focus and center what our values are. And so that's kind of what inspires, not just myself, but the rest of staff today as we work within the city and what we do.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question. You've mentioned repeatedly the importance of public art and public space and public goods in the projects that you work on. And I'm just wondering if you could explain why public art and why public space why this matters in the context of redevelopment.
Because it really gives great character to the city. I think, we're constantly pushed by those that are more creative than us to remember that there are things that we should be doing as a city to really, one, foster that creativity. It becomes part of the identity of the city, and it creates really cool places that people either associate with or want to be around. And this is everything that we've done as an agency, from art on the light rail stations to public murals throughout the Granary District, to art installations of just straight up public art out in the streets and the medians, to working with developers to infuse art in their project to add just something a little bit different. And so we believe in it. We believe those are the finishing touches on developing a city that makes it unique, that makes it fun. And I think we all realize when we go to other cities and we visit, those are the things that kind of stand out and you remember, and you think that just kind of provides the feel for that city and how they carry it out and demonstrate that art in the built environment around you. So we're excited to do it. We really enjoy our relationship with the Arts Council and trying to find ways to infuse more funding into public art and get those opportunities involved in projects. And we just a couple months ago, our board of directors, the city council, approved a new art policy for the redevelopment agency that we're really excited about, that will not only drive a better process for how we work with developers to put it in their projects, but also provide ongoing funding through the agency, either directly by our efforts or in conjunction with the Arts Council, to keep finding new opportunities to build more public art. So it's something that we really strongly support, and we like to continue to push that throughout all of our project areas.
Well, thank you so much. And I am out of my prepared questions. It looks like we did receive another question from Kathy, and she said, can you give examples on unique, I'm trying to understand the context, unique projects and kind of where they are, examples of unique things that you've done as an agency that you can kind of point to and say, this is a special project here?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's great. I think it started 25 years with the assemblage of property and the development of the Gallivan Center, which at the time was, a great creative urban plaza inserted right in the middle of the downtown. We've done similar projects like that in terms of, the Marmalade Library on 5th North and 3rd West. The agency was involved in, the public plaza that was built there, and that is soon to expand into a public park. The Central 9th neighborhood is a great project that the agency went in and strategically acquired properties and then turned around and sold those to developers and marketed them for specific uses, from everything from the small businesses in the grocery stores to, the commercial office space that wanted to come in the neighborhood, as well as the nonprofits that, Spy Hop, the youth media arts center that recently opened, as well as the one we're working on right now with Bicycle Collective. And through all of that, we've also done things like I said, the murals throughout the Granary area, streetscape improvements within areas, and building parks and plazas. And so a lot of these projects, most people don't even know either the agency did or was involved in. And, that's great. But those are the ones that we're most proud of and put out there. And, like to tell people that it's something that we pulled to fruition.
Thank you. I just got another question from Peter, and he asked, how does the redevelopment agency fit within the mayor's goal of planting new trees throughout the city?
That's a great question. We're actually looking at opportunities of ways of trying to do that in a way that's also a public art installation. And so we've got a crazy idea to do that, but outside of, not necessarily being the department that would be responsible for directly planting trees, the way we as an agency can do that is through the development of our open space and parks, as well as making sure that developments that we are involved in obviously are looking at every opportunity to increase the amount of trees that they incorporate within their project.
Well, thank
and
you.
Then the basis, sorry to take a side step, the basis of our streetscape improvements in the Central 9th area is that we as the agency wanted those streetscape improvements to infuse open space in that community. That is something the community has very much wanted for a long time. They don't have a lot of open space in that area. And so the purpose of that streetscape was really to try to bring some of that open space, green space into kind of the heart of that business district and And that's been a challenge to try to increase how many trees we can plant within that streetscape and still meet, the goals and objectives of public utilities and streets and the bus route and the fire department. But that is at a core of everything we try to do, is always try to, provide that open space and that green space.
Thank you. I have one final audience question. This is from Luke, but how can community members get involved in the redevelopment agency? Is there a community board or advisory board that folks can participate in?
It's a great question. First and foremost, whether it's the RDA or the city overall, we'd say, get involved with your community council, get involved in any city planning activity, whether that's master plans, whether that's the housing plan, because a lot of what we do starts at that level, the broader city outreach for what the community wants and what those goals are. For us specifically, if you're within one of our project areas, come talk to us. We can talk you through what our project area plans and goals and objectives are. We do have an advisory committee that works with the rest of the city in terms of finding people who are interested in serving and placing them on the various boards and commissions that residents can sit on and be involved in to kind of help engage in what the city's doing. And then obviously, we have our public meetings once a month with the city councils, our board. We have public comment. We're always looking for input and feedback on projects we do. Depending on the project, sometimes we actively go out into the community councils and engage with them to get input on how we should be developing properties or what we could be focusing on, or even just what we can be doing better. And then we're on all the social media too. So there's always opportunities to chime in there. And we love to talk to people. So don't ever hesitate to just reach out to us directly. And we're happy to come and talk to you or a group of people that are interested in just knowing what we do.
Well, thank you very much. I've run out of audience questions, and I'm at the end of my prepared questions. So my last question for you is kind of our final topic is there a question I should have asked you today that I didn't ask you today?
I don't know if it's a question you should have asked. It's a question we get asked a lot, which is, just the high level. Why does the RDA just give money away to big developers? And that's always a misconception that we try to correct and provide good information on. If there's a takeaway, and what we like people to know is that we don't just give money away to corporations or, multi-millionaire, billionaire developers. That we typically start every project as a straight up market transaction. And from there, what we usually do is any incentives or discounts that we provide are in consideration of having public benefits within those projects. And as I said earlier, those benefits range from everything from economic development and jobs to affordable housing, small businesses, to transit, sustainability initiatives. So we do a lot of those projects, like I said, with public arts and culture, art commissions. We do a lot of great things in terms of we own and manage the Gallivan Center, and that's an amazing staff just within Gallivan Center that is actively trying to provide, arts and culture to the community. And we do that in partnership with Eccles Theater. And so, we really like to always just take every opportunity to dispel the myth that we are just lining the pockets of, developers who don't need our money, and that we are very much rooted in the thought process and within our culture that we're trying to make development better for the city. We're trying to make the city more livable and build really cool neighborhoods.
Thank you. I really appreciate that final thought. And Kathy had one final question about what you just said. Does what you just said apply to city-owned property sold to developers and corporations? Not entirely sure I understand the context.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And the short answer is yes. This is where kind of we as the agency are slightly different than the city. But the city does very much have its own process by which if they're going to do a reduction or any discount in the land sale, that they have to go through their own version of a public benefits analysis and provide justification that the city council ultimately has to approve. So slightly different nuances. It's kind of more of a regulatory aspect on the city side, but they can also use that as a tool. They've done that in affordable housing projects for the same reasons that we do, is to try to make sure that those projects have the affordability the city would like to see, as well as some of the public benefits, whether those be small businesses or sustainability or mid-block walkways within the project. And so they just have a slightly different process they have to go through than we do, but the effect is the same and the end result is meant to be the same of trying to justify any discount or participation with, related public benefits that we want to see for the community.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. I've really appreciated our
Thank
conversation.
you.
I apologize again for the technical issues we had at the beginning, but I really, really appreciate your time today and look forward to future conversations.
Appreciate it. Turner, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. You take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.